Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining again. And moving on to the next panel discussion for the day, we have ANI Chennai chapter, and Ranjani Krishna Kumar is going to be moderating it. Thank you so much, Ranjani. So, and the panel discussion is on the topic Beyond Diversity, Cultivating a Sense of Belonging. And over to you, Ranjani.
Thank you, Shreya, and thank you, ANI, for having us today. I am Ranjani. I am the founder, marketer, writer at M-Dash. I am also a film critic and writer on the side. So I do multiple kinds of work, three of which I have spun off as businesses. Today, along with me, I also have Manu. Manu, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Ranjani. So I'm the founder of a social enterprise called #Code, where we mentor neurodiverse individuals programming to become skilled individuals and create opportunities. When I'm talking about neurodiverse individuals, I'm talking about individuals with autism, ADHD, dyslexia, Down syndrome, basically individuals with different cognitive abilities. I strongly believe like tech can help to break barriers, and this digital age, more than your degree or your certificate, that your skill set that matters the most. I'm looking forward to this conversation and adding a neurodiverse perspective.
Thank you, Manu. Welcome. We're looking forward to hearing from you as well. Dhanya, can I have you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Dhanya. I'm a product manager at Cube Cinema. So from a career perspective, I have a varied experience. Started as a developer, was in consulting for about 12 years. So though I worked for 2 companies in those 12 years, I worked with a lot of customers and got an opportunity to work with different companies in that time, right? And for the last 5 years, I'm in a product company. I'm also passionate about coaching individuals and mentoring and learning. And as a hobby, I love to travel and I'm into adventure sports. So I want to bring my perspective on the sense of belonging here.
Nice, thank you. Thank you, Dhanya. And Ramki, over to you.
Yes, I suddenly thought my face changed, but thankfully it did not. Yeah, but first of all, great that the conference is not starting in the Indian Standard Time. It's starting as per the regular clock, whatever we have. Yeah, that's me, Ramki, trying to give my best smile in the picture. So I'm a delivery principal in ThoughtWorks. I'm at ThoughtWorks for the past 5 years. And I was wondering what gave me a seat at the table. The seat at the table is because I did a 2 years of office leadership role for staffing, which gave me good perspectives about how do you set up teams, set up diverse teams actually, and then how do you set expectations and how do you manage the entire life cycle of people management. Yes, on the common interest, I think I probably also, like most Indians, I also love to watch movies. I was writing reviews, but then there are better reviewers like Ranjani, so I stopped writing.
Thank you, Ramki. All right, so let's begin our conversation today about diversity, inclusion, and how we need to look past diversity and inclusion towards a larger sense of belonging, right? But before we get into anything else, let's try and define belonging. What is belonging in the context of a corporate environment or a professional environment, and why is it important? Can I start with you, Dhanya?
Sure, Ranjani. So when a person feels they belong to an organization, right, they feel a part of a clan or they feel at home. In the sense they don't feel like an outsider, right? By this, I don't mean to say that people should really feel like, oh, we're all a part of one happy family, right? Whatever happens, then we still have to put up with each other. No, that's not what I mean. But this gives the comfort, for each and everyone, however diverse or unpopular someone's view is, right? That their view will still be heard, right? And their opinion matters to the larger context of what we're all working on. And if they have a discomfort or pain, that's understood by everyone they're actually working with, right? And even after that, if the pain continues, it's because of other factors. It's not because nobody is there to listen to them. Okay? But on the contrary to this, feeling excluded or lacking a sense of belonging, it has a huge psychological and emotional impact on people, right? And So if we're all in an environment where we're just dealing with machines, they can be replaced like a cog in the wheel, right? And things will work just fine. But think about someone who is feeling unheard, or who feels that they don't belong. They might be able to do their work, which is part of their day-to-day activity. But I strongly believe they won't be able to do it to their full potential, right? In terms of, if you think about their contributions, their creative spirit, and the many ideas which they can otherwise contribute, the team and the organization will really lose out on that, right? People tend to just shrink in a space and just do what is actually being told to do. And that's why I think belonging is absolutely essential for an organization and for an individual.
Ramki, I'll come to you next. Do you agree with that definition of belonging? And from your experience, have you seen that definition of belonging work in your organization?
Yes, mostly. Just before this call, right, I was mildly reflecting that I come from a town of Madurai, city of Madurai, or maybe town, whatever, right? And I migrated to Chennai around 2005. Even my college education was there. But until I think 2010, 12, I was saying that I'm a Madurai-karan. No, I'm not a Chennai case, right? So to me, belonging takes a lot of time. I mean, to belong to something, maybe it's a country or maybe a city or maybe organization, it takes a lot of time. What defines belonging to me is a constant integration. Of course, it's a jargon, but what it means is this, right? As an individual, me, I have a lot of needs, feelings. I have a past life, and I have certain opinions, certain perspectives about things, and a very unique way of doing things, also, right? At the same time, company is also something concrete. It has a purpose, it has objectives, it has got its own journey, pains, culture, and all that. Business model also, right? So when we say integration, what it means is that I, as an individual, need to understand all these aspects of the company first. At the same time, I also expect this company, which is like an entity, needs to understand me and accept me with all my needs, fears, failures, success, and all that. That's the starting point for me, where there is a understanding, awareness, and the mutual acceptance. And I question myself, what happens, when you have a sense of belonging, right? And I completely agree with Danya's point, right? The word potential is the operating word here, right? I'm able to express my strengths. First of all, I'm aware of my strengths because the organization has given me an environment that they belong to something, and I'm aware of my strengths, and I'm able to express that very clearly, despite having a set of weaknesses which the organization is ready to, forgive or withstand or accept that. In short, the operating word is constant integration because I as an individual is very different from 30 and where I'm now in 40. So this has to be a constant integration with the company and the individual, which happens often, leading to an expression of strengths. That would be my perspective.
Nice. So when we're talking about belonging, you're saying it's also a two-way street. It's not just one person working very hard to belong or the other person just working very hard to make someone belong, but it's when both parties are able to meet on the same plane is when true belonging happens.
Yeah? Yes.
Right. Manu, is that working in your experience? Would you like to tell us how you would define belonging from your context?
Yes. I think I completely agree with you when you mention a two-way street. One of the things that we observed in HashaCode with neurodiverse individuals is that when you accept the person for the individual they are without any labels or segregation, it goes a long way. An important culture, we are trying to set in our organization is to understand that everyone is different. You're different, I'm different. We all have our own perks and quirks, right? So look at the person for the individual they are, not by the labels or segregation or where they come from. Except I think it starts from within to accept that we are different, and then look at everyone. Let me give you an example. As I told you, right, many of our students are individuals with autism or ADHD. When they are nervous or anxious, I think belonging mostly comes to when things go south, not when things goes positive, right? So when they are nervous or anxious, they probably have a different way of expressing it than you or me. Some might start murmuring or do a repetitive task. So I think at that point, it's important to understand that everyone is different, not just through thought process, but the emotions that they show. and be open to it with empathy and kindness.
Yeah, okay, I hear you. So we're looking at belonging not just in terms of a group as an organization, but also as every individual being different. So when we talk about diverse individuals, you're saying don't look at them as this group of individuals, this gender, this class, this caste, but look at them as every single unit, and therefore approach how we can imbibe belonging from that angle. That takes me though to the next question of how we feel like we belong, right? While we are exploring aspects of understanding each other, accepting each other without judgment and things like that, typically natural belonging comes in an environment where there's a lot of commonness, right? So if you see extremist trolls on Twitter, there's a very strong sense of belonging there because they see themselves as bound by something very common. If I can extrapolate that to a professional environment, especially in highly culture-driven organizations, while on the one hand, there is belonging for people who already exist, it can get exclusionary for people who haven't yet joined the system. So in that sense, I am hypothesizing that perhaps the idea of I'm hypothesizing if perhaps the idea of diversity itself is at odds with belonging. Ramki, I want to bring you in first to sort of talk to us a little bit from the perspective of how, when new people join a really culture-driven organization, let's say like ThoughtWorks, is it exclusionary? Is there friction, and therefore how we can make it work?
Yeah, and when you said about the Twitter trolls, I was immediately reminded about the gangsters also. And there is a wonderful book about the Chennai gangsters of how they are having a very common sense of purpose. And it's very difficult to get inside a gangster purpose. But yes, I think when I joined ThoughtWorks 5 years before, it was a big shock to me because I was into thesis for close to 14, 15 years maybe, and then joined an organization which had a flat hierarchy. That was a big shock for me. So in a way, if you see, right, the popular opinion, if you say that a particular organization has a good culture, the immediate mental model is that, oh, it means that it welcomes everybody, and it's very kind, it's belonging and all that. While that is true in a lot of cases, but we have to see in some cases why a strong culture is also not so good for, to having a sense of belonging and to welcome a lot of new people. And I'm not saying it's a wrong thing, or the blame is on the culture, right? Not really, right? Because creating an organization with a sense of culture is extremely tough. It's easier to create an organization with just revenue as a focus, but if you want to create an organization with culture as a focus, it means that you need to have a lot of trade-offs, sometimes a lot of insults, a very strong founder, and a lot of alignment is required between multiple people when you execute multiple projects and all that. So what happens, I notice, is that over a period of years, right, with all this combination of, a business model, a strong founder, and a lot of trade-offs and a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging gets formed to the people in that organization, which means that me as an individual, a part of my identity belongs to that organization, right? I mean, and the organization is a part of me. So the danger comes at a point where I say this culture, this good culture, is because of 3 or 4 traits. So, for example, a company which has a great culture, let's say big consulting firm, right? If they are very successful and if they reduce to try saying that extrovert, Ivy League folks and highly competitive folks, if these are the traits of why I create a great culture, then I'm going to exclude anybody who is slightly different from that. And I really liked what Manu said. He said this belonging is a every single person approach, right? It is really tough, which means that a person A who is nervous in a conversation, you can't onboard that person, welcome that person, or take him into the organization in the same way as a person who is extremely extrovert, who is like bombshell when that person lands in a group, right? So that approach has to be very different. Coming back to the point of culture, right? So the danger is when the people who are existing reduce the culture to a set of traits, and then so much so say that if I don't get people who are not like this. I'm going to throw them away. And I've seen in cases in selected few groups and projects where they really have stopped the growth of the project even so much so that because I want to preserve that culture. No, I don't want to welcome anybody, right? And the popular question is that what do we do about such organization? What can we do, right? My experience is that you need to have a strong provocation from a leader, or something has to be shaken from the ground, or some business shock has to be got, so that a set of individuals with a strong culture will reflect upon it and then change it. Otherwise, having a gradual change to such organizations is actually very difficult in my experience and opinion.
Hmm. I hear you. I hear you. Dhanya, I want to bring that question to you, especially in the context of you saying that it's important to have people. When we talk about diversity, it's also diversity of thought and diversity of points of view. So, does diversity of points of view come in the way of everybody feel like they belong? And are they really at odds with each other? And where is the thin line that says we are an organization where everybody belongs, but we also have passionately diverse points of view?
Yeah, Ranjini. So it's a very interesting question. And one of the other things, I think if I understand what you're asking is also that with a sense of how can we have a different points of view and also stay away from promoting what we call the groupism, and which would tend to exclude people, right? Yeah. So, but before we get into that, I just want to add one thing to what Ramki was saying. But again, I don't want to promote groupism here because I'd also be sharing a ThoughtWorks experience because I worked in ThoughtWorks as well. So I'll just mention it and move on to my other experiences too, so that everybody, has a say. So when we talk about culture, what Ramki was talking about as a strong culture, right? Any culture of an organization, I mean, it can't be based on traits, right? It needs to be based on what that sense of purpose is. It's not just for organization, anything that we believe in, right? And it needs to evolve based on the experiences that we have and the inputs that we get, right? So if you actually look at it, even in a storm, it's really the trees that are able to bend and move, something like a bamboo, right, which will survive the storm. Something that's actually going to be firm and say that this is exactly what I am will probably fall down, right? It's not survival of the fittest, right? So that belongs to any organization or a culture as well. Now, coming back to how can we inculcate a sense of belonging, right? Or what it means. It really depends on how we look at belonging per se, right? It needs to be, like I said, based on a sense of. It doesn't even have to be like a shared purpose, but the goal is that. We are a part of the company. I might have a different view from, say, let's say Ramki and I were working in the same company from Ramki, but how we are able to work with each other, agree to disagree in some cases, and see it from the other person's perspective as well. So as long as we are able to listen to each other from that perspective and give each other the space, I think the sense of belonging would really come automatically, right? So if you actually look at a child which enters a new place, the child is not going to hesitate twice before talking to anybody or voicing what the child actually feels, right? It's mostly the adults who are conditioned by the previous experiences where they've been shut out or faced these situations, who are actually going to shrink and restrict themselves from even saying it loud. If I have another minute, I just want to add to one thing that which you mentioned, Ranjini, about how when you hire for M-Dash, you talk about, and I think even Ramki gave a similar example, right? So certain organizations have kind of traits or qualities which they look for, right? Somebody who's independent or solve their own problems, right? Well, those are great qualities, and most organizations need that, right? Because we don't want to, for lack of a better word, babysit somebody. However, the fact is, at what cost are we actually bringing in these individuals, right? Are we also adding another, attribute to it to say, can they actually be a team player? Can they actually work with other individuals, right? End of the day, if someone is going to solve their own problems, by taking away opportunities from the other people, right? Or not letting other people be involved, what is the overall cost the company or the team is actually going to pay? That's something that, I would strongly encourage organizations to think about.
Yeah, and this might be especially true in cases of neurodiverse individuals. Isn't that so, Manu? In the sense that to be able to empathetically and kindly accommodate everybody in the organization, the neurodiverse and the neurotypical, it's important that one doesn't take away the opportunities of the other. And therefore, I'm bringing the question back to you to see if there needs to be a change in perspective while we are building a diverse culture and accommodating everybody. Is that can that become antithetical to a certain kind of individual's sense of belonging and what we can do about it?
Yes, Rajini. I think what Danya said about having a perspective and able to understand the other person's perspective, I think that matters a lot. I just would like to add a point to that. When you're talking about neurodiverse individuals, there are going to be individuals who are going to be non-verbal. There are going to be individuals who might not understand our regular social interaction. What is common to you and me might not be to them. Like they might just walk past by you in the corridor and not smile at you, but does not mean that they're being mean or rude, but they're just not wired that way. So I think it's up to us to be able to not just understand a person through the words or dialogues, but also through the everyday action. I think that will go a long way, even just for you and me also. Some days you might have a bad day and you might have a good day. So to be able to see a person through the way they act or behave and judge them based on that would go a long way.
Okay, I hear you. If I may, this also feels a lot like it's a lot of work, right? It feels like this is a lot of effort for an organization to hire and retain diverse group of people, but also imbibe a sense of belonging. Especially as a small business owner, it feels like a job of its own. What is the business value in that? Is there business value in inclusion and cultivating a sense of belonging? If so, what is it? How do we, if not quantify, at least understand the business value of efforts like this? Manu, can I bring this back to you first?
Definitely. I completely agree. There's there's really good business value when you have a team full of diverse individuals, a team full of individuals with empathy and kindness, willing to listen to others' idea and build on them. It will lead to innovation. And I think for a company, it's very important to keep innovating, right? We have seen many companies that have folded because they couldn't innovate. In addition, the other important point to why have a diverse set of people working on your team is that when we are building products, especially tech products, right, our end users alone should not be diverse. I believe the creators, stakeholders themselves have to be diverse. Only then can we truly make an inclusive product. We cannot just have one type of individual developing products for all. It will not add different perspective and life experiences that comes along with these diverse individuals.
Okay. Ramki, do you agree? Is there business value in cultivating a sense of belonging?
I think I'll take a small pure capitalist view and then probably Manu won't take offense of it, right? I think there are three levels in which I see it's a big benefit. I mean, it's a pure capitalist view. They remove compassion completely, right? One is I've seen that from a purely brand perspective, I've seen a lot of companies utilizing the inclusion and diversity as a brand value that we stand for. So that's a big brand value that is I've seen. Secondly, I've seen the most important, at least in corporates I've seen, is that when we are trying to scale fast, you really cannot recruit the same type of people and then expect that you can scale faster. Because when you scale, as Manu said, you will get different kinds of opportunities for different type of clients, different type of end users and products that you will need different diverse people in terms of gender, maybe neurodiversity, race, region, a lot of things. So, for example, I had one person who was extremely quiet, and like when we put him in a project which was about servicing a B2B customer, he actually struggled in that project because his expression was not found. But when the same person was put in a B2C product, he was like, I don't know, like Elon Musk, right? He kept on throwing a lot of ideas because he is a person who is grounded in creating apps for end users. So that way, even if one person doesn't fit a certain kind of project, you can always find out another opportunity where there is a resonance and synergy which will be there. Yeah. Plus all, I mean, unless you are trying to, cut the wood and then that's a division of labor. For all other kinds of industries, services, and products, you will need diverse talent for it.
Tanya,
Ranjani,
can I bring that question? Sorry, yeah.
Ranjani, if I may add a point to what Ramki said, I think, as he rightfully said, bringing a diverse set of people into a particular task will enable them to do it really well. Like what he said, B2B into B2C. Talking about neurodiverse individuals, some of them have incredible analytical skills. They might work 8 hours straight, and because they are not used to social interaction, they will just keep working. So each individual has their unique skills. I think it's up to the companies and the leaders to identify what their skill set is and let them grow along with that.
No, it's very interesting you say that. It's important for organizations to identify what business value each individual can bring, and there is definitely business value that's left on the table. I hear you. I hear you. Dhanya, if I can bring that same question to you. From your experience, have you seen diversity produce business results?
So of course, Ranjini. So I can just take one small example, right, which happened in the current company that I work for. So it's a digital cinema company. But I just want to call out. I mean, and you and Ramki are into that space, right? As huge movie buff. But fair disclaimer, I'm not a movie buff, even though I work there, right? So we have a girl who joined us as a fresher 2 years back. Just to give a little bit of background, until last year, she must be what, 22, 23 years of age right now. She had not watched a single movie in a theater, right? That's because of the family's belief structure and some of the constraints that they have. But then she was determined, convinced her family that this is only a technology work and not really, movies. Like we don't have to go for shoots or see stars, etc. Right? And then she joined. So against all that odds, right? Coming to a different city and then just working there. So when she started, she used to be very quiet. May not be even comfortable raising questions or concerns, right? And but she's extremely dedicated and put her heart and soul into her work. So we did something very, very small, right? As a token of appreciation of her work. So every month we have a town hall meeting where we awarded a badge award, calling out, what was it about her work that actually, really helped us in that particular month. And if you actually think about it, it's not like an award that you can put in a showcase where everyone who comes home can see. And it's not a cash prize, right? That you can actually even go out and get a coffee or a meal. It's none of that. It's a really small token of recognition, but the impact that it made or it had on her was huge, right? She was extremely happy. I mean, obviously, because being called out, in a meeting of over 70 people, and then her father, felt really happy that she was appreciated, and not just happy, he felt bad that he didn't realize the scope of the work or what potential his daughter has. And he felt he was like kind of sorry that he might have actually stopped her from going for this opportunity, right? It kind of had that change of mind to that dad there, right? And now she's like really a brand ambassador, right? So she talks to her college and the recruitment cell and talks to them about how good the company is, and speaks really highly of the company, which I definitely think would add on to the culture and the kind of people we'll actually bring in, and in sense the business value as well.
It's fantastic you tell that story, because it kind of resonates with me, even though not from the position of your colleague, but more from the position of a business owner, right? I started off as a freelancer and I began my career being an individual contributor. And just in the last couple of years, I've been trying to grow this business, hire people and build a team so we can do this at a slightly larger scale. And I failed repeatedly for the first couple of years because either like I've had a history of people telling me that I'm difficult to work with. So that's the voice in my head, and I'm thinking maybe I'm difficult to work with, so I should probably not traumatize these people. So let's either hire freelancers and let them have manage themselves, or let's see, give me one moment. Or I got someone else to sort of manage these people and take care of themselves and stuff like that. So I realized that as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, I sort of approached this thing as M dash belongs to me, and therefore I was closing doors to anybody else feeling that sense of belonging in my organization, right? It's only in the last maybe 7-8 months that I've been working with a coach and getting some help, and I've sort of gone away from that M dash belongs to me phase to I belong in M dash phase, and therefore suddenly there's a lot more space for a lot more people to belong. So in that sense, I think at M dash, anything like we're hiring more people and writing a lot more stuff in a pandemic year, and I would just say 100% of all our profits this year is because I found belonging at my organization, and I let other people find belonging at the organization as well. So in my opinion, I think there's absolute value, business value, like real money value in belonging. And I think it's great that it's not just money, but also a lot of intangibles which have such an effect on multiple groups of people across the board. Dhanya, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. No, I was just smiling when you said you've been branded as someone who's difficult to work with and all that, right? I wanted to say +1. I've had that experience as well, right? So and I completely understand where you come from. And a lot of times what happens in that case is, and I think you really did the right thing of hiring a coach, because what happens is a lot of the times other people's insecurities also get kind of projected on other people as it's other people's problems. So we really need to understand and reflect on what our problem is versus what is actually projected on us, and a lot of the times we can't do that, right? We need help. So if I can just take that question further, Ranjini, and answer how can we bring in the sense of belonging? I think great. You started off, being the leader in your company, but I really think that it shouldn't just start or stop with the leader, right? And see, what the biggest problem that we have with inclusion or belonging today is that people treat it like a benevolent mission. That if I am being nice or I am including someone, so I am a better person. Because if you actually look at it, there's a lot of I in that already, and we're not looking at what we can actually do collectively, right? And it just, the whole purpose is lost if we actually go into that mode at all, right? And on the other side, again, people take a moral standpoint and say that's the right thing to do, so I do it. No, it's not. Let's just make it simple, right? Make it a part of the process of onboarding. Because if you actually look at it, an employee, right, is joining an organization, for all practical purpose, they want to join the organization, right? They already have something nice, to know about the organization that they're actually joining, okay? And so there is a sense of positivity, and they want to, and as human beings, we're all vulnerable and anxious, right? Everybody wants to belong and do their best and put in their best foot forward. So when the person incoming is, I would say most of the cases, right, is actually going to be coming from that perspective. So it's more the onus on the company and the existing employees and the onboarding process itself to integrate, like the word that Ramki had used, right? Integration, right? How do we integrate them with our, with the company, make it a safe space for them to explore? And are we also open enough to learn from them, right? As opposed to just saying, this is how we do things, so you follow this, right? It should be actually a two-way street. And I think it's doing this as part of onboarding and building that sense in the early stage is very critical, because you're starting on ground zero or a slightly positive ground at this point, right? Because if we don't do that then, and people feel distanced already, you're going from an uphill, from negative to actually building that sense of belonging. That's going to be really difficult.
Yeah. I'm hearing openness, operationalizing things, taking responsibility, not just leaders taking responsibility, but an entire organization and incumbent employees as well taking responsibility. We are almost running out of time. Ramki and Manu, I'll come to both of you for just one moment each. Tell us a little bit about what anybody can do to encourage belonging in the professional setup. I'll start with Ramki first.
Yeah. I think when Manu said this, like, I really liked it. I think I also realized the mistake I've been making. Right? You said that if somebody doesn't smile, that don't take offense to it, or something like that, right? I always had this problem. Somebody doesn't smile back at me. I always thought that, oh, this person offending me, right?
Yeah,
I think that is that's a very interesting, and I say it's interesting because of the connect that Dania made, right? Where he said there has to be a strong sense of purpose in what we do. Easier said, but when you go for a scale of 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, and 10,000, 50,000, 1 lakh employees, whatever, right? The sense of purpose that the leader has gets diluted and then it gets lost somewhere. That is one. And secondly, each of these projects have a different set of people. So you cannot apply one standard set of, traits and practices and bulldoze every team with the same thing, right? So it comes to the aspect that how much can a local leader or local leadership, the local could be a project, could be an account, could be a small office, whatever, right? How much can it understand the sense of purpose and ensure that the conflicts which comes because of diversity are resolved in a continuous way? Because there is question about having identities and conflicts, right? I fundamentally think conflicts have to be there, because if you don't allow conflicts to surface, it means that you are repressing the conflicts, and that's much more dangerous. To me, it's I have a job for me because my primary sense of job responsibility is to ensure that a team which has diversity is able to express its strengths, but most importantly, ensure that bring the conflicts on the table. Because conflicts is where it exposes that you don't have a sense of belonging. There is something unresolved. So you have to create that sense of responsibility by resolving conflicts continuously. Of course, you have a very smaller ideas, like you can have a coffee conversations, or you can be an ally to somebody. Like I had people who are not able to express very well because they had a fear of failure. Right? For those people, it's very important that you be an ally to this person. For example, they give an idea. It is important to see what is the merit of the idea, even if the idea is very stupid, right? You see what is the merit of the idea, take it to 2 or 3 steps, then probably make a decision. So that that person also feels that, oh, there is something which is in me, which is useful, but it's okay if there is a decision made after 2 or 3 steps of exploration. So all put together, conflicts at the local level has to be resolved. The local leadership has to be very good in sense of purpose. And thirdly, be an ally to people by giving a voice to their expression and co-creating things.
Okay, thank you, Ramki. In addition to that, what can leaders and organizations do to be more welcoming of neurodiverse individuals, Manu?
Yes, so I think I would like to build on both Danya's and Ramki's point. The first point where Danya mentioned about appreciation, I think appreciation goes a long way, not just in when something is good, but also when something goes bad, goes south. So I think organizations need to have processes and work expectations that give space for someone to fail, try, and learn, like what Ramki mentioned about conflict. And another thing that I'd like to add is that all of us need to be open towards the idea that communication is not just through dialogue, but also through everyday action. There are going to be individuals who might be non-verbal or just cannot do any kind of social interaction. And the last part, coming to your onboarding and hiring process, this has to be more open to accept different types of individuals. Like I think Dania has mentioned, it's very important. I think that's the point where someone feels the belonging to a company, right? So there cannot be one fit approach for all. Neither can you expect that everyone to think or behave the same. I would like to end with this very nice quote of Einstein that says, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's not capable.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dhanya, Ramki, and Manu. We have a bunch of questions, and I think we have 10 more minutes. So let's look at some questions and answer them. The first one here is from Rohit, and he asks, how do you gauge a person's creativity and his adaptability in an organization when he or she moves from an MNC to a startup? Dhanya, can we have your
Sure.
answer to this?
Yeah. So I think it's first seeing how well the person is able to integrate or perform, right, or understand the changes itself. Okay. And also it depends on the new company, in this case the startup's ability to also have that conversation and walk them through the process, right? I'll probably just give my own personal experience in this case. It was not a startup per se, but I moved from a big company like Cognizant, right, which was at that time about, I would say, about 25,000 people when I quit. Oh no, or even a little bit more, right? When I quit in 2010 and joined a company called ThoughtWorks, which I thought was small at that point, but which is about 100 people in the Chennai office at least, right, at that point. So it was a completely different angle if you actually look at it, right? But one of the good things that happened was they assigned what is called a buddy system, right? So there was a buddy assigned to me even before I joined the company, and it was nothing with respect to say work per se, right? Just easing me. Say for example, I walk in after I finish the onboarding process. Who do I have lunch with? Who do I have coffee with? Because I don't know many people, right? And are people comfortable to actually just go and say hi? And as a at that point, the way the company was is also that you see anybody new, people would just say hi and introduce, saying I am so and so, and whatever. Yes, I know Manu will interrupt and say that not many people will be comfortable doing that. I completely agree with that perspective as well, Manu. But this is something that really helped me, right? So also understanding where or what background the person is coming from, and the company and the person working together is what would help this, I guess.
Okay. Ramki, Manu, any addition? Okay, then let's look at the next question. Belonging comes from different types of identities. All of us have different identities. Identity in team, skill, branch, department, company, social, so many things. How do you consolidate all these and resolve the conflicts of different identities when it occurs? Ramki, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think currently I work with a team which has definitely good gender diversity, geographical diversity, and also people from LGBT communities, right? The big lesson which I learned in that is that for the first half of the year, right, I was trying to avoid conflicts, meaning that in my mental model, I was saying if there is a conflict, it is not good because that means that people are not aligned, then I have to create alignment. So I started speaking them separately. But what I discovered at later point in time is that conflict is the area where you have to really establish a common forum. And each person has a conflict because they come from a different background and they have different mental models about what is authority, what is performance, how to work together. So it's extremely important that these conflicts are brought to the surface in multiple forums and continuously resolved in every day or every week, right? So that to me, it's not going to go away. Even if you say that if I resolve the conflicts now, if you go to the next month and if you ask me, are there going to be conflicts? Yes, there will be conflicts. This is going to be every month, every week affair. Like there is a quote, right? What is painful if you do it every day, then it becomes easier. So conflicts are painful initially because you would like to have a friction-free, pleasure-filled, fun environment, right? But that's not the reality which is there in the project. But once you notice that the conflicts are being resolved, you will find that a sense of purpose slowly gets formed to the team, and the conflicts become much more tangible. It's not about mental model. It's about, let's say, a tech solution, or it's about a particular functional approach. Those conflicts are far more easier to resolve than the conflicts which comes because the mental models are way different. So, in summary, conflicts will be there. It has to be continuously resolved. And what we have to watch out is that are the conflicts becoming from person conflicts to, let's say, tangible tech functional conflicts. Then, yes, you are in a good spot. Else, I think you are asking for trouble.
Thank you. Thanks, Ramki. Makes sense. Priyank is asking how to transform a person's thinking from non-belonging to belonging. To summarize what we have discussed so far, right? We talked about the responsibility of the leader to make sure that everybody is comfortable. We also talked about the system, local managers, making sure that everybody gets what they want. But we also talked about little tips like, reach out and speak to people, make it part of your onboarding process. Make the environment comfortable for everybody to hang on and stuff like that. In addition to this, do we have anything specific that an organization, a leader, a manager can do to convert somebody who feels like they don't belong to become comfortable and feel like they belong? Manu, can I bring this to you?
Actually, I want to add a point. I just remembered something. It is a different perspective. As I was having a call with a large organization yesterday, talking about neurodiversity inclusion, and I was really impressed the way they're approaching this. They did not approach this as a diversity and inclusion. They rather approached this as a business value. And I think that makes sense, in a long sustainable. You shouldn't look at this as a DNI or some kind of a social thing. It should just direct business value. That is what's going to make it sustainable and grow, right? If someone is going to add value to the company, obviously you'll be happy about them and grow with it, right? So I think everybody has to take a step back and don't look this as a DNI. Look at this, how can it add value to your company and integrate it like that.
Okay. The next question also is for you. Sasikala is asking, how can we bring in more neurodiverse folks into the workplace now?
Yes. See, I think neurodiversity is vast. Like, I'm almost in India, every 1 out of 500 people is individual with autism, and it's growing. And I think one of the things that you have to understand is many of them do have some kind of basic education till you're 12th, but then when it comes to your professional education, right, or your tertiary, and there's not much option because they lack the social interaction to be able to go sit in the college. The environment plays a whole role. So maybe the whole onboarding has to change in a way where you can skill them and hire them. Do not expect them to come with a degree or something like that. So I think it's all starts in how you want to integrate them into your workplace, and you cannot use the same methodologies that you use to hire a new worker.
Okay, all right. Amar has a question: how to break regional groups in large organizations to improve diversity and inclusion? Dhanya, can we come to you with your experience having worked in large organizations as well as small organizations?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question fully, Ranjini.
Yeah.
So, Amar, you can just, yeah.
So I'll read the question again.
Okay, so I think I understand. So basically, sorry, Ranjini. So does it mean that each regional office or regional office can have its own group? How do you integrate them with the large with the company as such? Is that what it means?
In fact, Amar, you will have to come back and clarify that, because I thought what he's asking is how do we make every small part of a large organization also inclusive, right? Like,
yeah, sure.
The US branch might be very, very inclusive, but the India branch isn't. So are we averaging it out, sort of thing?
Yeah. So I'll probably just go back to what Ramki had said in one of his responses, right? So as we actually scale, we can't just depend on the leader, right? To basically say that, or to imbibe everything. So that can happen once or twice, right? So we should probably look at it as a span of, say, 1:5 people, right? How many people can we actually influence or take along? Anything more is going to be a challenge, right? So as we actually build the company, I think this is probably part of the core value that needs to get built, and you put processes around it so that eliminate the morality out of it, right? Or keep everything out, keep it simple, and say, when we have to work, what are the set of steps that we would take, right? And how does it work for the set of people that are actually there? So if there are different people in the teams that need to come together, again, what is it that they would actually look at to work with, right? How can they listen to each other, based on what is said and what is not said, right? Like body language or anything. Are people actually feeling comfortable? And maybe like knowledge sharing sessions or experiential sessions across offices, maybe that will also help.
Okay. Amar has come back and sort of clarified his question. So basically, he's asking, what about groupism that happens in certain organizations? How do you break that groupism in terms of language or caste or class or whatever it is? So how do we break that groupism? Because we also have to understand that there's a reason the groupism happens in the first place, right? One could be that it is, it helps to consolidate power, but it's also that when I see someone I feel like I know, then I feel a little more comfortable than I would feel like a diverse group of people, none of whom I can relate to at all. So what is it that we can do to break that groupism?
If I may add a point,
Yeah, Manu.
just hire a neurodiverse individual. They won't understand groupism or anything. Just put them in the team, and everything will be okay afterwards. So
Exactly, right?
solution. Danya, back to you.
Yeah. So the point that I was wanted to say, Ranjani, was, see, as a person individually, each people can have their own belief system, right? Like the caste case that I think Amar has put in, that happened in Cisco US.
Yeah.
That should be really left in their house, right? Because when they come to an organization, individual identities or belief system should not really play into picture, but that's easier said than done, right? Because again, it affects how someone is conditioned per se. That's where I think looking at how we would approach something, bring the focus back to what needs to get done, right? So in this case, if we have to look at it from a belonging or integration, what would we actually look at? That everybody in the team has access to all the information, right? Everybody's thoughts are heard, right? Everybody is able to contribute equally and effectively to their best potential. If we kind of can look at what will enable those aspects, that will kind of automatically discourage this kind of a behavior.
Okay, hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're out of time. I just want to thank every one of you for being here today. It was a fantastic conversation. If I may just summarize, so in essence, what we discussed today was that belonging is the feeling of an individual in an organization to be themselves, express themselves without judgment, without segregation, without labels, without judgment. We talked about how diverse group of people feeling like they belong actually has business value in terms of innovation, coming together, having new ideas, and competitive advantage. We also talked a little bit about what leaders and managers can do to imbibe that sense of belonging. I think this was a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed listening to all of you, and I learned a lot from the three of you about what I can do to make M-Dash and my future organizations better. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Shreya.
I always forget to unmute it. So yeah, it was indeed such a wonderful conversation, and we got to learn a lot. And definitely for me, it was a topic that I was looking forward to. So it was very interactive, and thank you so much for an amazing discussion and sharing your own stories.